Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Uh, Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Digital Racism webinar. Today we'll be unpacking digital biases, and I'm the chairperson, the madam speaker, Miss Ofensa Morwane. I'll be introducing our lovely keynote important speaker, Mr. Mnisi. As a passionate youth activist, Kuzomnisi was the 2021 UJ SRC chairperson and worked at UJ as an instructional designer until May 2022. He has served in various youth structures in both university and externally, including participating in youth initiatives in Mpumalanga, where he was born. He's currently a senior instructional designer at the University of the Free State. He specializes in learning technologies, curriculum theory, youth and education, and teaching and learning in general, and he's interested in researching these topics. Kuzo holds a Bachelor of Education degree and an honors degree in STEM education from the University of Johannesburg, and he's completing his Masters of ICT Education from the University of Johannesburg. He is also a UJ 4IR ambassador, is responsible for broadening the conversation of the fourth industrial revolution. Bagaitsu, let's give Mr. Mnisi a round of a warm welcome and applause.
Oh, thank you very much, Offense, for the warm welcome. As Offense has said, my name is Kutom Nisi. I'm a master's student, and I'll be sharing my thoughts and the research results on digital racism. So when I undertook this research, I had, preconceived attitudes and behaviors around the issue of racism. But I think one of the most important things that came out here is the world that we live in is volatile, and we need tolerance as much as possible. And today I'll be speaking on the prevalence of racism and hate speech in online environments. Um, we'll start by giving out the theoretical understanding of what constitutes as racism. We'll go to the real life expressions of digital racism, power, and socioeconomic domination. And then we'll try to integrate the theory with the results findings, and then we'll go to the solution and the way forward. And then we'll have a Q&A if anyone has a question or a comment. Offense, you want to say something? I see that you're unmuted, or is it an error?
Oh, sorry, colleagues. No, it was just an error. Let me mute myself.
Okay, thank you very much. Remember, you can pop out questions as I continue. This webinar is being recorded, and there's a Q&A option where a button you can click and ask your question there. The moderator will see if the question is not biased or the question is not racist, and then she will display it if it serves the purpose of the webinar. So without any further ado, thank you very much for joining me. I'm going now to start with the theoretical understanding of what constitutes general racism. The moderator will be able to answer any questions on the chat box, so feel welcome to answer those questions. So what is racism? In general, racism is the belief, more than anything to me, and according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a belief that a particular race possesses superior characteristics and abilities that make them different, and therefore want to dominate anything that happens in society. So that is a general understanding of what racism is, and it is this belief that makes people to act a certain way, and because they deem themselves as people who possess desirable social, cultural, and economic statuses, they then purport this behavior, which is called racism, on the dominated group. But of course, we understand that racism is more than just an attitude or a behavior, but it is more an economic and social standing and an economic power that one finds him or herself in. And the person who is a sufferer or the victim of the person who perpetuates racism rather is called a racist. So that is a general understanding of what racism is. However, the purpose of this study was to look at the manifestations of racism on digital platforms such as social media platforms, um, YouTube, online newspapers, blogs, and even news anchors sometimes find themselves in hot waters because of racist behaviors or attitudes. So we wanted to also make the case that racism is not limited to offline behaviors and attitudes, but it also manifests itself as hate speech, as discrimination and the like on social media and on every digital platform. But the aim of this study made sure that it excludes results that were from other countries because we are focusing on South Africa. But we did include other cases from different countries that have similar trends to South African context. So the general overview of the results, because I was searching on digital platforms using the um, um, articles, case studies, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp conversations that are posted online. So one group of the same race propagates hate speech on the other. So the one group that sees itself as dominating, whether through an idea or through economic power or social standing, propagates hate speech on the other group. And the other group, because of its so-called inferior abilities and inferior skills, is then a victim of digital racism. The racism that you see on digital platforms sometimes is very subtle. It's hidden behind phrases, idioms, and humor. So you may not be able to detect the racism that is on digital platforms because it has humor and a lot of jargon that is used there. But if you're someone that is conscious, you're able to pick up that it is indeed racism. And some of the perpetrators, hide behind pseudonyms. Some of them call themselves power monger. Some call themselves the woke folk rather. So you can identify their real identity on social media platforms because they hide behind these pseudonyms. But the message that they're driving across, of course, becomes very racist. And then the victims seldom take action because of the pseudonyms that are used on digital platforms. They can only report, but they can't identify the real person behind the pseudonym. However, thanks to digital algorithms, we are able to detect some of the hate speech or racism on digital platforms, and that post automatically is taken down. And also, if the account is under a pseudonym, the account is permanently suspended from that social media platform, such as Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So that is a general overview of the study. So, for example, these are the examples of how racism manifests itself on digital media or on digital platforms in general. This is a picture of a video game that is played online, and the name of the game is called Ethnic Cleansing. So the ones who are being killed and shot at in this game are obviously people of color, and of the perpetrators happen to be white. So it manifests itself, and it propagates the fact that people of color must be killed. Obviously, there is an ideology that is behind this game. Another example is when the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, won elections, and one lady posted that he only won because he's black, and she called Obama a nigger, or a negro, which is a name or a phrase that is not supposed to be used, such as the K word in South Africa. So this is how some of the social media users propagate racism, and you are able to pick it up if you are conscious. And then another example is this one who's openly racist and says that he doesn't trust his doctor because his doctor is black. So as I said before, that racism is not limited to the ground or the earth in which we are living, but in digital platforms as well. You find racist behaviors manifesting themselves, and you don't suffer racism because you are of a certain race only, but you are not suffering racism rather because you are incompetent, but you are suffering racism because you are of a different color. So it has nothing to do with the competence, the skills that you possess, but it has everything to do with the color of your skin. Another one is this one, who said that she won't go to Africa because she's afraid that she might get AIDS. And she ended up saying, "Just kidding, I'm white." So you see the prevalence of digital racism there, that is hidden behind humor, behind jokes, behind banter, but it is racist. And some of these tweets and Facebook posts have been taken down, of course, thanks to algorithms. And then this is another one that happened here at home in South Africa sometime in 2016, where the lady said that the beaches in Durban and in Cape Town are filthy because there are black people who are using them. So he ended up calling them monkeys. She ended up calling them monkeys, which is very racist, and was actually instigating other races to take action against blacks. So you find that some of these cases are from deep hatred of a certain culture, of a certain race, and the victims often feel helpless because these are people who have some kind of social standing. Because this lady was actually a former senior member of a political party I won't mention, but it's someone that has a good social standing, and the words that she uses obviously propagate racism. And now I want to problematize the issue of racism. Racial inequality, this is Weaver. She said that racial inequality persists because policies of the civil rights era were inadequate to addressing the situation of blacks in the bottom third of the income distribution. And this is very much important. As I said, that racism is more than a behavior, is more than an attitude, but it manifests itself as behaviors and attitudes. But in actual fact, if you trace it back, you will see that it comes from a place of privilege, a place of good social standing, a place of economic power. That even if I'm racist, you won't do anything because I have power. So we've attached that fact as well. And the pattern in the racist material online suggests that the one who is racist has privilege and social standing. As I said, racism is more than attitude and behavior. It extends to economic power, social standing, and whatnot. Hegemony is about domination, even in digital spaces, whether it's about domination in terms of money, which is economics, culture, social standing, or even ideas and ideologies. Because I'm of a particular race, I believe that the way I think is superior to other races. So even in social media, you find those prevalences as well. And then the possible combative ways is to report, 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 and report. So if you see any cases of digital racisms, you can report the post to make sure that it's taken down. And we need to understand each other's diversities. We are a different nation. We have different belief systems. We have, different even mannerisms, and we have to understand that and actually make sure that we um, uh, are tolerant towards each other. Of course, there is a deeper concern of economic power that needs to be addressed. But I think also the way we act, the way we know each other is very important, because I will know your struggles and you will know mine, and probably it's going to be better. And I think the perpetrators have to be prosecuted. There has to be a certain policy and a law that says that if you are found to be racist, you must serve jail time instead of being made to pay money, which is way less, So you need to go to jail if you are found to be racist, even on social media. And I think solidarity of a cause is always great. We need to stand with each other in solidarity to combat digital racism. The same way we have problems of racism in offline modes is the same way we encounter racism in digital platforms. And racism is a virus. Once it catches you, it will catch another person. The victim today of racism today might be a victim of racism even tomorrow. So we have to stand in solidarity. And that is it from me. Thank you very much. I will take any questions if there are questions. If there are no questions, thank you very much for listening. On the Q&A, um, are there any questions, Offense? Or if you want to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll recognize. Or if you have any question that you want to ask, Offense, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nisi. That was a wonderful, wonderful, insightful presentation. It really sparked a lot of interest in me. It's very motivating. I wish you could have gone on longer because I was really intrigued. um, there's so many questions I have. I think it's out of intrigue, being intrigued
Yeah.
and enjoying it. Mr. Nisi, with the digital racism name, some people will say a figure of freedom of speech. How do we work around that? Because in the other comment, I saw that it was the Native American man who said that he's got a black doctor, but he doesn't trust his black doctor. How do we, the counter, he'd always say, but that's how I feel. How do we make sure that um, feelings like that, where do we draw the line with what is considered digital racism and someone arguing that he's allowed to say how he feels, what he thinks, because he's got a right to freedom of speech.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. I think we need to understand that with every right that you have comes responsibility. You have a right to speak out, you have a right to freedom of speech, but you have a responsibility to ensure that you don't use that right to propagate hate, to be racist towards others. I mean, we all have our own views, we all have our own feelings. But if we now start to make racist comments online, I think it's a bit problematic. So that's why I'm saying that there has to be a law that stipulates that if you are found to be racist, you need to serve jail time, because you are infringing on someone else's right. And I don't think that is the attitude we should have going forward. As much as we have a right of freedom of speech, I also have a right to be respected, because racism manifests itself as many things. It also takes away a dignity of someone. It takes away the self-confidence, if I may call it like that. You are not only perpetuating it, but you're also hurting other people as well, and it may go on to generation and generations to come. So thank you very much for that question. I hope I answered adequately. And another question from Anile Klaba says, do you think our government has policies put in place to protect people from digital racism? Not that I'm aware of, but I know that with every technology that is prevalent in our society today, there are guidelines that are stipulated. However, the government's voice is very subtle and very narrow. It is not saying anything about digital racism. It has policies about racism in general, but policies on digital racism, I have not seen one. However, the consequences of racism, I think, apply both on racism that is caught on social media and racism that is caught offline. I see there's a hand, Chulu. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Minisi. I just want to continue the sentiments that it was a very insightful presentation, opening our eyes to issues that we might, in general, turn a blind eye to. I just want to find out from you, what do you think could be possible measures in terms of policy that can be put in place to limit online racism or digital racism?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Chulu. I think it boils down to who has access and who has the power to control these digital platforms. Because as much as we want to combat racism, I think it's very important for us to get hold of the control of the digital platforms. For example, you might find that Facebook itself is very racist when it comes to things like advertising. So it advertises houses that are on sale, if I can put it like that, to a particular race. But when it comes to blacks in America, it doesn't show those particular houses to black people, because it profiles them as people who do not have money because of the color of your skin, you know. So I think if we can have international symposiums on racism on digital platforms, and have organizations that such as the United Nations, UNESCO, and others as well, to have inputs on those discussions and documents, and then we have a standardized document. But as long as we are not sure of how the algorithms work and how the profiling works, it's still a long way to go. Yeah, so I think I answered that question. Offense, I'm not sure if we still have time, but we can close it. But I'm available after the webinar to answer any questions. Over to you, moderator. Okay, I think Offense has some technical glitches. But from me to you, thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for the comments and the questions. I hope you have learned a thing or two, or just I confirmed some of your experiences. So thank you very much for everything.